Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and we finally have the long-awaited West Virginia 44 import to review for you guys today. It has been quite some time since we were promised this ship all that time ago in one of the first Waterline roadmap videos, and she is finally here as part of the 4th of July event going on right now in World of Warships. If you wish to pick the West Virginia 44 up, there's one of two ways to get it. You can get it through the event, which by doing the missions associated with the event and going through the armory event, which we will go over in a separate video, you can pick the ship up for roughly 7,000 doubloons through that method. If you wish to purchase the ship outright, there are two options for you at the time of recording. You can pick her up in a bundle in the armory, which gives you a 10-point commander, 3 million credits, and some other goodies for 80 US. And then you can buy her as part of the mega bundle, which you'll get her, West Virginia 41, and I think the Halford, or actually, let's go check that out right now. That bundle costs you about $180 overall. So this is the Independence Day event, yeah, pages of history. So you get West Virginia 41, 44, and yep, and the Halford, all for 181 US. Or you can, again, just get the West Virginia 44 for $80 in the premium shop. These are the event bundles, which we will, again, be going over that in a separate video. So before we get much further, massive shout out to the channel's Patreons, because I am not a CC nor supported by or affiliated with Wargaming in any way, shape, or form. So I do not get these ships to review for free. I have to purchase them using either ad revenue from the channel or the generous donations from these Patreons. So they made this ship review right here possible, and all ship reviews that you see on this channel. If you wish to support the channel, joining Patreon is the best way to do that, besides just watching the streams and videos. Of course, out of the gate as well, the art department, the modeling guys, they got this one down. I love the look of these post-Pearl Harbor refit ships. They're just so thick, and a mix of that, you know, like 30s, 40s technology along with that 19 teens and 20s technology. It just looks so good. I just love the aesthetic that these ships give off, and the fact that this is a real still historical ship, of course, makes that so much better. I just love the look of these refits. They are amazing. Just so aesthetically pleasing, at least in my opinion. So yeah, we're going to be going over her today. We're going to take a look at her here in port, look at her characteristics, her armor, her stats, and then we'll take her into battle and give you guys my review of her there. And I will be giving her a score 1 out of 10 and letting you know if she's worth the time to either grind out the missions or purchase her outright in the premium shop. So let's go ahead and get looking at the West Virginia 44. So off the bat, she is a premium ship, so you do get the Tier 7 premium package, no matter how you get the ship. You get a 5% boost to your credits and a 50% boost to your various XPs. I am running the green boosters on my West Virginia. I run the XP boosters because, of course, running a YouTube channel, I have to free XP through lines, reset commanders, things like that. That's why I typically run full boosters on my ships, but I am also running the 40% credit booster as well. So if you see her economic performance in game, that's what's going on with it there. As far as her camos go, you do get 2 camos if you pick this up through the event right now. You get the Arisen from the Ashes camo, which goes pretty frickin' hard. It looks neat, but these over-the-top camos aren't really for me. I appreciate them. This one looks very good. I like the color combination, but I just like sticking with the more historical and realistic camos, which is this right here, which again looks like most of the other American premium camos, and it looks nice and isn't just one color like a lot of more recent premium camos. So thank you there, art department. All right, her armor layout. Well, I mean, it's Colorado, so it's It's Colorado. 26mm bow, 26mm upper side plating. Her torpedo bulges are 35mm, which is nice. And then 26mm stern, and you get a slant of 203mm over the steering gears. Stern and bow decks are 26, mid deck is 31, and her superstructure is 16. Turret faces are 457mm, turret cheeks are 254, 229 on the side cheeks. The turret rears are 229, the tops are 127. If you take all this armor away, her citadel is buried beneath all that armor. So the sides are 44, it's 38 on the top, and 35 in the rear. The front, probably 35. Yep, 35 as well. So the citadel itself is pretty weak, but they got to get through the torpedo bulges, and then, of course, the other armor on top of that, so you're not really getting to the citadel. But if you do get through the torpedo bulges, you have this... oh, that does not drop down, my mistake. But yeah, no, between the torpedo bulges and the fact that it is underwater, you're not getting citadel in this thing. Unless there's some very weird things going on with the with the shells and the geometry of the armor, like the German ships, you're not going to get citadel. Considering, again, this is a Colorado, it's a pretty well played ship, and most of us know how tanky the Colorado can be. Well, not really tanky, but squishy it can be. It absorbs the shells, right? It doesn't get rocked by them. Alright, so her survivability, you have 59,100 hit points, with a 37% torpedo damage reduction, which is pretty good for Tier 7. The guns, you do get 4x2, 406mm guns, so 8 16-inch guns at Tier 7, which is very nice. They have a 30-second reload time. They 180 in 45 seconds. Maximum dispersion of 231 meters at 17.1 kilometers, which is the maximum base range of the of the West Virginia. And then the HE has a maximum damage of 5,700, a 36% fire chance per shell, and 68 millimeters a pin. The HE comes out the tubes at 803 meters a second. The AP, you get the good old American AP, maximum damage of 12,400. Well, it's the same as the Colorado, which is the good American AP, is what I guess I should have said. 12,400 maximum damage, 768 meters a second initial velocity. So they're the Colorado guns, but they are less accurate at range according to the game. But, I mean, yeah, you still have 16-inch guns at Tier 7, which is a massive plus in this ship's favor. The airstrike, you do get 2 of the Catalinas, and you have a range of 8 kilometers, which is, again, pretty decent by Tier 8 standards. Better than some of the Tier 9 premiums. Defenses, you have 58 of the single-mounted 20mm Oerlikons. You have 1 of the dual-mounted 20mm Oerlikons, which is really weird that you have 1. Okay. You have 1 of the quad-mounted 20mm Oerlikons. I really want to know what was going on with the design of the ship. But they said, yeah, we're going to put a dual mount on one side and a quad mount on the other side. I guess with the post-Pearl Harbor thing, they were just slapping together what they could get. And then you get 10 of the quad Bofors, glorious 40mm Bofors. And then your 16 5-inch secondaries do also count as AA. I completely skipped over the secondaries. Yes, I did. Which are, of course, the main feature of the ship. That's bad that I skipped over that. Alright, so they have a reload time base of 2.5 seconds, which is very nice, and a maximum range base of 6.3 kilometers. The HE they fire is, of course, the American 5-inch secondaries, 1800 maximum damage, 5% fire chance, 21 millimeters of armor pin, and they come out the tube at 792 meters a second. Now, if you watched yesterday's video, which got freaking buried by the algorithm, which is very annoying because I worked for quite some time on that video. You know that when I was talking about the Louisiana secondary build, I said, well, these actually suck. On Tier 10 ships, they do because they can only pin 21 millimeters of armor. But on Tier 7 ships, a lot better. You have a lot more that these secondaries are a lot more effective against. Not really because of the armor pin, but because of the reload. 2.5 seconds base reload time. on these guns that have a 5% fire chance, and then you get, 8 of them per side with a pretty good base range, and of course a very good range that once you build into them, these are quite fearsome. And I have played this ship a bit. I kind of couldn't wait. So we'll get to that in the gameplay section. I don't want to spoil anything. Alright, maneuverability, she is, again, it's Colorado. 21 knot maximum top speed, 670 meter turning circle radius, and a 14.8 rudder shift time. Concealment, 14 kilometers base concealment. For her box O gimmicks, you have fighter or spotter. You have DFAA. You have the improved American Battleship Hill, which is very nice. And then the American Battleship Damage Con, which is also very, very nice. So, we are going to go ahead, stop a commander and module build on here, and I'll meet you guys right back here. Alright, for the commander build, I'm running my usual American Battleship Commander, which involves preventive maintenance, which reduces the chance of the main guns becoming incapacitated along with the steering gears and the engine by 30%. I went with Grease the Gears, which gives us a faster turret traverse time. I do this because this is what you really need when you get into those close quarter situations. You really need to be able to whip your turrets around as fast as you can, so that's why I take that. And plus, with most battleships, faster turret traverse is just more comfortable to play with anyway. Then, of course, we took the relevant secondary skills, including long-range secondary battery shells and manual secondary battery aiming. Of course, this increases the range of the secondary guns by 20%. And this, of course, gives us the boost to accuracy over time. Once you have manually selected a target with your cursor, this will bring the accuracy up to 50% in 45 seconds, so you get that buff after 45 seconds of firing, but does gradually build during that 45 seconds until you get that 50% buff to your secondary gun's accuracy. And of course, the other thing is the 10% boost to the reload time and the 10% buff to the dispersion overall. And then, of course, Adrenaline Rush, because when you take damage, it's nice to get a buff to your reload time. This is a 2.2% buff to the main battery and the secondary battery reload time for every 1% of HP lost. Then, of course, Emergency Repair Expert to give us an additional charge of the heal, and it also increases the action time by 10%, so that's more heals going on. And then Consumables Expert to give us a 10% buff to our detectability. It's nice to be able to sneak up on the enemy ships as much as you can before you get within secondary range. For the module build, I went with Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. This gives our AA and secondary guns a 100% buff to their survivability, which we'll talk about in the review section. And then I went with, oh, that's actually incorrect. It's supposed to be Damage Con Mod 1. Whoops-a-daisies, that's another million credits gone for me. So, Damage Control Mod 1, because fires suck. This reduces our chance of catching fire by 5% and flooding by 3%. Then, of course, Secondary Battery Mod 1, which gives a 20% buff to the dispersion and to the the secondary battery firing range. And then Damage Con Mod 2, because fires still suck, and this decreases their burn time by 15%, and same for the flooding recovery time. I'm running the relevant signal flags that I run on most secondary battleships, of course. So what this does to the West Virginia. So, sorry, not the survivability, the artillery. So the main guns now rotate in 37 seconds, which is very nice. The secondary guns now have a 2.1 second reload time base and a 9.5 kilometer range, which is pretty solid by Tier 7 standards. That's around the same as the Gneisenau and the Scharnhorst, the Tier 7 German battleships, kind of the gold standard for secondaries. And the speed is now up to 22.1 knots with the speed flag, and the concealment's now down to 12.6 kilometers, which is pretty solid for a Tier 7 battleship. Alright, so that is the West Virginia kitted out. I'm going to go ahead, take her into battle, and I'll meet you guys there with my voiceover review of the West Virginia 44. Alright guys, voiceover Mountbatten here. And the West Virginia 44, the ship herself has finally been released. The ship we were promised so long ago in the Waterline event. And turns out they turned her into a secondary ship. They took the Doom Turtle idea and went with it. And, well, they did it pretty well, in my opinion, especially for a Tier 7 battleship. Tier 7 battleships are really, really difficult to do, in my opinion, because they are, in my opinion, I'm saying that a lot here in the last 10 seconds, in one of the worst situation matchmaking-wise, normally. Now, why is this? Because Tier 7 battleships can see Tier 5 battleships, but they can also see Tier 9 battleships and Tier 9 matches and Tier 7 matches. So you have to somehow balance a ship that won't absolutely just take a dump on Tier 5 ships and mop the floor with them, but also make it to where they can do something in Tier 9 matches and not just be damaged pinatas. So it's a very tricky game of how do we balance this to where it won't just murder Tier 5s and it won't just get obliterated by Tier 9s. And battleships are really stuck with the worst deal, in my opinion, when it comes to Tier 7 matchmaking, because cruisers and DDs, they can still, they're typically HE focused. And they typically have a fast enough reload on their guns in order to be able to, at least just throw HE at the higher tier ships. And as long as you're firing HE at the higher tier ships, you'll probably set a fire here and there. And since you have these rapid fiery, spammy guns, you can at least get some fires going on higher tier ships and get your damage in like that. Battleships can't really do that. They can swap over to HE, but they typically don't have the fire rate to, of course, be constantly setting fires on higher tier ships like cruisers and DDs can. DDs, of course, also have torpedoes, which, again, a Tier 7 stealthy torpedo boat can still be a Tier 7 stealthy torpedo boat. In a Tier 9 game, of course, there's going to be more radar and, of course, CVs and things like that, but they can still get that going. Battleships, of course, they're going to be spotted when they fire their guns, and the higher tier ships are going to be like, hey, look, a Tier 7 battleship, here goes half of its health with a single salvo. So, yeah, Tier 7 battleships are stuck in a crappy situation in terms of matchmaking and just where they are in the game. So making a good one is one of the most difficult things to do, in my opinion. I've seen many a Tier 7 tech line and premium battleship come out, and it's just garbage because of that, because it's a very tricky thing to do. So how they do with the West Virginia 44? Pretty well, pretty solid in my opinion. There are a couple of issues that I do have with it, and we'll get to that here in a moment, but let's just start going over what she's like to play. The ship is, of course, a secondary focused ship. Wargaming came out on a dev blog a month or two ago and announced their changes to the ship, shifting it more to a secondary focused battleship. They applied the acceleration that the Vermont gets, or a similar acceleration style that the Vermont gets, where it's basically like the tank from GTA 5, how it accelerates really fast to its top speed, but its top speed is only, 22 knots. So, yeah. So it's got that good acceleration, which is great for, of course, brawling, when you can quickly go from trying to kite someone in, only going, 1/4 speed, then pop it up to maximum speed, and you'll pick up quite nicely. That way they won't just simply overtake you. So it's nice for responding to situations that are close to you. That being said, though, it still only goes 22 knots, so you can't just, be zooming around the map or running ships down. Now, since it is a Tier 7 ship, most of the time with today's matchmaking, you're going to typically be mid-tier or top-tier. Tier 9 ships, as of right now, and probably for the foreseeable future, are being yoinked into super ship games. So Tier 7 ships, again, either mid or top-tier. So that's definitely in the ship's favor for now, and with that, with his acceleration and its speed, it's doing fine from my experience. So you typically want to, of course, either entice someone to kite into you, or just push into your secondary battery range, which is 9.5 kilometers, which again is pretty solid by Tier 7 standards. When you're in a Tier 7 game, and we're going to talk about getting up tiered here in a moment, because it did happen to me a few times while I was playing the ship for this review. Now, the secondaries themselves are really nice. There's only 4 of them for each side, though. So they're able to keep up because of that very nice 2.1 second base reload time, and that's before you take damage. Now do keep in mind, again, this is a Colorado hull with torpedo blisters welded onto the side, so it is pretty chunky. You're going to eat a lot of damage from other battleships or from heavy cruisers with guns that can pin your 35mm torpedo blisters. That's, again, very nice you do have for 35mm torpedo blisters, because that does mean that those light cruisers that can just get their HE over 32, your torpedo blisters are a giant middle finger to their HE, so that's very nice. But for the heavy cruisers that can get through that, yeah, you're going to eat a fair amount of damage, which does, again, lead to your secondary guns becoming even faster. If you have the Adrenaline Rush Commander skill, which I'm pretty sure just about everybody runs. So that 2.1 second reload on your secondaries is going to go south very quickly, and you're going to have a very, very nice reload on those 4 secondary turrets per side. Which means that the enemy that's in your secondary range is having to deal with 8 very accurate American 127mm guns with a 5% fire chance. And of course you can, take the commander skills and flags to get that 5% fire chance up even more. But even with just that 5% fire chance, I found that these secondaries are having no problems getting fire started on whatever it was they were targeting. And that's about American secondaries. So that's how they typically do most of their damage, through starting fires and impinging superstructure. Or if you run to like a DD or a light cruiser, there's a good chance, especially if you're top tier, that these secondaries can actually pin them. At that point, it's going to be absolutely devastating to the target ship. Now, a big issue is that there are only 4 secondary turrets per side. And they're all right on top of each other, right in the midsection of your ship, where most players are going to be aiming to chunk your superstructure, which means that your secondary turrets are going to wind up eating a lot of shells, which of course leads to them being destroyed. Now, even though I took, all the relevant modules, all the relevant commander skills in order to buff the survivability of these secondary guns, there was a couple of matches where, yeah, I had an entire secondary bank just destroyed, which then means that, hey, all these commander skills that you've dumped into secondaries are now worthless because your secondary turrets are destroyed. And there's the added frustration, the fact that now we know that module survivability is highly influenced by RNG. I did a video on it a few weeks ago called It's All RNG, where we go over the revelation of the fact that even though you take the modules and the commander skill to buff your secondaries or your torpedo tube survivability, there's still a good chance that RNG can just screw you and say, no, I actually want this mount to have 500 HP instead of 5,000 HP. Because it randomizes it for some reason. I mean, Wargaming gave their response and all that stuff, but yeah, that's still always in the back of my mind now that we know that information to be true. So, yeah. The bottom line is that you have a very small number of secondary turrets. Tier 7, Tier 6 is still the tier where a lot of battleships are like either World War I modernizations or early World War II battleships, where they have usually a large number of single-mounted secondaries, meaning that that there's just one gun in the mount, and they might have 8 secondary guns, but they're in 8 separate modules that have to be knocked out. The West Virginia, it's only 4 per side. So instead of having 8 turrets per side, you have 4 turrets per side. They're all on top of each other. It's right where most ships are going to be aiming to chunk your superstructure, so there's a very good chance these secondaries are going to get knocked out. However, again, it only happened in 2 of the, I think, like 8 matches that I've played so far. So, yeah, just be aware of that. Now, her main battery guns, they are the Colorado guns, but less accurate at longer ranges. So, yeah, only a 17.1 kilometer main battery gun range, but if you're playing the ship as a secondary ship, that doesn't really matter. And from my experience, too, I mean, there's still 16-inch guns. You have a spotter plane. The spotter plane gets you out to 20 kilometers. And, yeah, you still have 16-inch guns. So when you're in a Tier 7 game, you typically don't even need the spotter plane. Of course, if you just clip a cruiser with these guns and it hits the right spot, you settling them, you're doing 12,000 damage. But from close range, of course, having 16-inch guns at Tier 7 means you can just ignore the bow armor of the ships that you see and just go right through them, which is great. And since you do have 16-inch guns, when you do get to those tier 8 and 9 games, you do have the spotter. You can still kind of hang in there, but not quite to the level of Colorado, because Colorado, of course, has much better accuracy, much better range. So you can kind of sit further back in Colorado and comfortably just kind of keep throwing your 16-inch shells at the enemy team until you just through sheer volume of fire have an okay amount of damage. So yeah, it can't do that. But even without that, I found that I was still able to hang in there in higher tier matches, just through the survivability of the ship with the improved American Battleship Hill and the damage con, and just still having 16-inch guns on a tier 7 ship. That, again, that can't be understated that you have that on a tier 7 ship. So I was still able to hang in there, not as well as the Colorado, but better than a lot of the other tier 7 battleships that I've played. So it does okay in higher tier games. But yeah, you are a big target. Again, it's the same downsides as the Colorado. You're a big, chunky, slow American battleship. If a higher tier battleship looks at you and they have any, half decent aim, they're going to chunk you for like 15k. That's just the reality of playing the Colorado. That's still very much true here with the West Virginia 44. So, overall, what would I give the West Virginia 44? I would give the West Virginia 44 an 8 out of 10. It's a really fun ship to play. I'm glad they went with the Doom Turtle approach. When you are able to get in secondary range, which, again, with tier 7 ships isn't really that hard, 9.5 kilometers. Hell, even with tier 8 ships, it's not terribly hard. But of course, like with all secondary ships, with all brawling ships, the stipulation is when you can actually get in those situations. This being a tier 7 battleship means that when you are in tier 7 games, it actually happens a fair amount more than, of course, in tier 8 and 9 games. Of course, when you get in tier 8 and tier 9 games, ranges are pushed out a little bit more, but the ship is still able to hang in there and at least contribute to the game and do something, unlike a lot of other tier 7 battleships, which are kind of just screwed at that point. I do enjoy the West Virginia 44. However, I must say it's pretty scummy of wargaming to lock this thing in an $80 bundle if you just want to buy it outright and you don't want to deal with the event. So that is, again, scummy in my opinion. What happened to just releasing premiums in the shop, wargaming? I mean, if you want to add it into the armory for the event and add it in like some reduced cost fashion, like, hey, if you go through the event, you can get it like 20% off rather than just buying it in the premium shop. I don't think anyone would have had a problem with that, but of course. Will it be added to the premium shop later? I believe Wargaming said it'll be added sometime in the future, but they said that about the Brisbane, and Brisbane still isn't here yet. So another question, Wargaming, where Brisbane? Because that was in the future too. I think we're approaching like 6 months since the Brisbane event was live. So yeah, if you do want the ship, I would suggest either just playing through the missions and getting it for the 7k dubs, or waiting for it to come to the premium shop. I would not pay $80 for a tier 7 premium, even one as good as the West Virginia 44. So that's my 2 cents, but it is your money. You are all grown adults or older teenagers according to my demographics, so take this information and do with it what you will. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 50,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday and wonderful rest of your 4th of July weekend, my fellow Americans, and hope to catch you guys in the next one.